wanted to start with Munster, Murray, who was probably the most eye-catching victory of the weekend. I don't know why I described it as historic during the intro. I was kind of winging that. It wasn't necessarily historic. It was just really significant in that Toulon have only lost four times at home in Europe in the last 14 years. Munster hadn't won away from home this season as well, despite their great run through the URC playoffs at the end of the last campaign. So I wanted to ask you, because you called it, you said Munster would win the game. How did they actually go about it? Where did they improve compared to recent results where they hadn't won in four games?
One thing they did really well was kick the ball, and they didn't overplay as they've kind of fallen into the trap of very recently a few times where they kind of get stuck in that middle third. Now, they did attack with ball in hand lethally, and I'm sure we'll get into the specific instances of that because there were some cracking tries, but they kicked the ball 40 times as well. Some of that was attacking, kicking to great effect, but they also managed the territory a little bit better and didn't get kind of cluttered in the middle third of the pitch or stuck in their own half. They exited well, and even off Casey's box kicks, they got great success a few times, really. That was a massive part of it. They were exceptionally precise with their attack then when they did attack. If you think, it's nearly the 29th, 30th minute by the time they actually get a proper attack in this game, and they take 3 points from it. It's the Crowley penalty to kind of get their first notch on the scoreboard. And after that, nearly every time they attack, they score. You know, a few minutes later, it's the brilliant Nankerville try, which is a typical try for this Munster team. It's on 11th phase. It's really nice multi-phase attack where nearly everyone's involved. There's so much movement. There's players swinging out the back. There's forwards linking, carrying. There's sniping from 9. There's a real variety to it. And then they take their chance on pen advantage. And they did that really well. They're precise in terms of how they attacked. And then I thought Dennis Leamy really nailed his defensive plan. Listen, it's not a vintage Toulon team. That was obvious to everyone watching it. And they were poor in many instances. But Munster came up with a plan largely based around stripping the ball in contact, which they did, 5 or 6 times, really, where they went high on high Toulon ball carriers who were quite upright into the contact. And it was something they'd scouted, and they stripped the ball on many occasions. If you think about the first quarter in the game, it's basically relentless Toulon pressure in Munster's 22, and they turned the ball over 5 times, I counted. And it's really important. I know that Vainicolo scores his wonder try in the 23rd minute, and you think, oh, that's all the hard work undone. But really, Toulon could have been potentially, in a really strong winning position by that stage. And I thought, even though Vainicolo goes and scores that try, it is a wonder try. And obviously, they could have done better there. But you kind of think, okay, let's just move on. He scored this amazing try. Let's move on. And they did that really well. I thought it was a good marker of where they were mentally, just to go, we've been defending well. We slipped up there with this absolute freak show of a winger dancing through us, but let's just stick to our plan. And they did that throughout, and it was dominant in the end, wasn't it? They could have even had a couple of more scores, and Toulon kind of petered out. And really, really impressively from Munster, given what they've done recently, they managed that last quarter excellently. They were in the winning position. We've seen them slip there so many times now. With a stronger 23, that did help, but at the same time, they were quite late in their use of the bench, really. They just did a better job of not allowing Toulon to get a head of steam up. And that was through a combination of a bit of patience, even times where in that last quarter, you think they could have cross-kicked there, or, I mean, there's one chance where Joey Carberry probably should pass on the try line and they score another try there. But it felt like they were eager not to overdo it in that last quarter and just try and stay in that Toulon half, which they largely did. So overall, I thought it was a really excellent performance.
I couldn't help but wonder, Berch, watching Jack Crowley's crossfield kick to Thomas Ahern for his try, how often they had tried that exact thing this season and it had just skimmed Ahern's fingertips and gone into touch. And it makes you realise, maybe in retrospect, a lot of the margins in Munster's disappointing season so far have been fairly thin. And actually, this game was one in which they had to nail their marks, and they did so with the return of a lot of their senior players as well. Like, they arguably don't win that game without Peter Romani, without Niall Scannell. They were absolutely massive. And sometimes it's kind of Occam's razor. The most obvious solution is the one right in front of you. Munster needed some of those players back, and they delivered on the day, didn't they?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think when we saw the team, I certainly was much more confident about Munster because it was just set up perfectly for them. Like, backs to the wall, they needed the result. Away in France, decent sized Munster fans coming down there, and that experience definitely guided them through. And they put together, like, I agree with Murray, it was a really smart, really well executed performance and had lots of variety in as well. And they did have a plan B. You know, I've been critical of them overplaying a little bit, and they did set their stall out quite early and change that game up themselves, change the game up what they normally do, and give themselves more opportunities to get into their counter-attack shape, which for me is probably the best source of possession. I think they're really good when teams kick to them and they decide to not kick back straight away and play. But you have to be able to have that variety. So brilliant, and it sets up this weekend Northampton, like, who are flying, coming to Thomond Park, and I'd imagine the Munster fans would be re-energized. But it must have been tough for them. They had a tough period there in December, with obviously Bayonne, Exeter, and then losing to Leinster and Connacht. But when you saw the disruptions they've had, and look, they still have a massive injury list, but they just got some of the right faces back, people who know what it takes to win in Europe. And it was excellent. Yeah, and now it just flipped again. Now you're excited about them. You know what I mean? Like, I think, to be honest, I think if Munster have the best players available, they should be thereabouts for top four. You know, top four. Are they ready to win it yet? I'm not sure, but they should be thereabouts to potentially get into a semi-final in this competition. But it is prevalent under having some of that experience. Like, they have a great crop of youngsters, but you know what we saw in Connacht in particular, it was just too mixed to match. You know what I mean? There was just too many people missing, really, to give those youngsters the opportunities to be able to do what they do. So, yeah, this is going to be a great week.